Mere conservatism.
You know, I almost called you, David. And by the way, that's David Perry, and I'm Cleve Walker, and this is Mere Conservatism. I almost called you and said earlier, before it came out, hey, I want to wait to make sure that when they come out with the latest, that if they include Roe v. Wade in it, we can talk about it.
And still nothing.
Nothing.
Now, by the time you hear this, chances are pretty good that it will have come out. But that's what I'm saying. It's very inconsiderate of them.
That's important for you to note, because there's certain things we would say and be dealing with now, depending upon whether they had come out now. So, if you're wondering, why aren't they talking about that? At the time of the production of this podcast, we don't have the official word.
There have been some great decisions coming out of the Supreme Court about guns, about religious liberty, those kinds of things. So there are some decisions coming out, but
the most important right now, we know what that is.
I gotta agree with you. It's this Roe v. Wade thing. I mean, this is going to be, if the decision comes down and it's just like the one that was leaked, this is the biggest political event of my lifetime.
It is. I mean, it will be, and it should be. I mean, by all accounts, it's going to happen. I mean, Roe v. Wade will at least be overturned in the sense that it will be down at the state level. Mm-hmm. Again, this will not end all abortions. Having said that, it would be a reminder to me never to underestimate the power of prayer, because I've been praying for this for years, and I got to tell you, David, I gave up. I mean, I really did. I felt, okay, that's not going to happen. We're going to do the best we can to mitigate things under the current circumstances, but I don't see them going to revisit Roe v. Wade.
I had to admit, I prayed the same thing and had the same feeling that it was probably never going to go away. I didn't stop praying for it, but I'm like you. I didn't really think that we would see it. I figured that the best we could do would be to hem it in at the state level as much as possible. But
so it'll
be a huge answer to prayer. And
this is super big, and we're going to touch on that, even though we don't have at this time what the official word from the Supreme Court is. But as you said, the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 ruling, did do another good deal. As New York's gun regulations that made it difficult to get a license to carry a concealed handgun were declared to be unconstitutionally restrictive, and that it should be easier to obtain a license to carry a gun. Yes, even in New York. And by the way, that existing standard, David, required an applicant to show what they call proper cause for seeking a license, and it lets the New York officials exercise their discretion about whatever a proper cause is. Yeah. Now, Judge Clarence Thomas, and I want to get your take on this, he wrote the court's opinion on this in the majority, and he said, part of what he said was, the Second and 14th Amendments protect an individual's right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside of their home. Because the state of New York issues public carry licenses only when an applicant demonstrates a special need for self-defense, we conclude that the state's licensing regime violates the Constitution.
Yeah, so I'm interested to read more about this decision and the implications of it, but obviously this is a good thing. Clarence Thomas mentioned specifically their handguns for self-defense, which is a special category of guns, and I wonder if that kind of thing is legally binding.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
What regulations would be allowed? Like, there's also a rule in New York, it has to be concealed. You can't carry open. So I'm assuming that would be upheld. That you could make that regulation. Right. Personally, Cleve, I don't know if you know this, but I don't think that an individual should have to have a permit to carry a gun. I don't believe that that's right. I think the right position is constitutional carry, recently passed in Georgia. But so there's that. But a lot of these states, like New York, are what they call a may issue state. And the law reads that they may issue a permit to carry a gun. It means maybe they will, maybe they won't, and they have the discretion. To me, when I read this decision, the way I understand it is basically the Supreme Court is saying that these states that require a permit to carry a gun, they have to be shall issue states. So there's may issue states, there's shall issue states. That means that you shall give those permits to the qualifying individuals.
Right.
That's a different standard than may, because you're not allowed to say no, basically, as long as you meet the basic requirements.
I did not realize that.
So that has been a difference between some red states and blue states that both require permits. Now, I think it should be constitutional carry, no permit, but that's not what's at issue here. So that's my understanding, that New York and really all these states that have these may issue rules have just become shall issue states. They would have to do that or be in violation of this ruling, is my understanding, and that's a very good thing.
It's a very good thing. I mean, just when you had the progressives and the Democrats crowing, and this is so cynical for me to say this, but crowing because the recent shootings put them in an emotionally strong position with a lot of folks to immediately, quote unquote, do something just when you thought they were getting the headwinds to do something, which, by the way, they will have the framework of something. We're finding out that there's a Supreme Court still in power, or in the Supreme Court, that will recognize that the Second Amendment still exists. Okay. And to me, it's a huge win. It's an important win, not just for people who carry weapons. This is my point. This is, for me, not about just the right to bear arms. That's important. But it's, again, telling the Democrats that the Constitution is still valid.
The Second Amendment is the law.
Yes. And if you want to change it, then you change it the right way. You change the amendment. If you got the power and authority or the votes to get the people in office to do that, but you don't just ignore the thing, which is what they're doing with their gun laws. So 6-3, that's pretty good.
It is. It is. It's a very good decision for gun rights. I think it's awesome.
Now, Breyer, in the dissenting opinion, his point was, he said, we have just made the efforts of states to restrict guns too burdensome, extremely burdensome.
Good.
That's my point. I would say, that's the purpose of the Constitution, to restrain the power of the government.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what? You said something there, Cleve, that's very important.
Okay.
And it's key when you talk about the Constitution and the government. The Constitution is there to limit the government in every case.
Right.
If you read the Constitution and you apply it in a way that limits individuals, you're doing it wrong.
And that's
always true.
That's what the Democrats want, though, because once you start down that road, okay, then you can willy-nilly change a whole bunch of stuff, supposedly constitutionally, because individuals are affected by it.
Yeah,
and
the Democrat, the left, they love to use the law to limit people, to limit freedom, to control people. That's the Constitution is in place. Well, really not just the left and Democrats like to do that. The right likes to do that in some situations as well, and they have done that. Mm-hmm. Frankly, government does that.
Yeah.
Government naturally progresses in a way that limits people's freedom. The Constitution is in place to put a limit on the government to keep that from happening. It has worked. It has worked fairly well for 250 years. It's not as strong as it used to be. It's deteriorating because it's been under attack, and that's not good. But we got to remember, when we are applying the Constitution is there to protect us from the government.
And that is the thing that separates America from so many nations before it, because we're saying basically we don't want a sovereign ruler, okay? Even the leaders that we elect are restricted about what they can or cannot do based upon the law of the land, which is the Constitution. And that's why the American experiment is so important, and that's why Biden and company are doing everything they can to change that. Mm-hmm. They are.
They want the left and the Democrats. They want and this has been true for 100 years. They want a all-powerful central government.
You got it.
Our country was specifically set up to avoid that.
Exactly. You got it. And if somebody is poo-pooing you and saying, no, that can't be, all you got to do is look at what they're doing. Now that they are in power, they are literally taking the reins of every bit of control, whether it's your health care, whether it's your ability to defend yourself, whether it's your right to educate your child according to your own lights. They're literally trying to bring all that, David, under the auspices of a central federal government. Mm-hmm. And this decision flies in the face of that. It says, again, there is still a U.S. Constitution. Wow. Anyway, it's just nice to get some good news besides the news of what we hopefully will come out about Roe v. Wade.
There was also a great decision about religious freedom, saying that that the states could not hold back funds from religious schools.
In other words,
with their voucher programs.
If they're going to fund any other type of institution or school, they cannot discriminate against religious or faith-based just because they're religious or faith-based, which they were doing.
And that happened in Maine, and they've been doing it for like 30 years. They've been not allowing their public funds to go that they give to parents to use for private schools. They have not been allowing those to go to Christian schools, which the Supreme Court said was discriminatory, and you can't do that, which is another good thing.
That was a great victory, and because for me, that is the only issue for which I would consider myself pro-choice, in the sense that I believe in school choice, okay? I believe that parents have the right to choose the venue of education for their kids, and if the government supplies or helps one institution, it cannot discriminate against faith-based institutions. They need to supply vouchers for them as well.
Conservatives have been saying for years and years and years the money should stay with the child. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to spend, let's just throw out a round number, $5,000 a year on educating a child, if the state is going to spend that money stays with the child. In other words, wherever that child goes to school gets the $5,000. That's the way it ought to be.
And the beautiful thing about that, even though I can almost hear somebody, particularly if they're associated with the educational unions, but if that happens, then you're totally defunding public schools. Here's the deal. Nothing causes improvement, David, in a person's product, whatever it is, like competition. If you're competing for funds based upon the results, that people want, it's going to make you better. And if you can't compete, you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't be there. So they're saying basically that public schools have some type of divine right to any and all funds that come from our tax dollars. And again, that ruling you're talking about says no, that's not the case, particularly if you're funding other schools.
And I'd like to see, by the way, more states. Very few states actually attach the money to the child and let them and have the money follow the child where parents send it. That I would like to see more states do that. It's time for us to see that happen.
It's a huge win again, and also it kind of goes back to Governor Youngkin's win over there in Virginia. It's a sign that what people are really wanting, to have their kids have the best possible education and have their parents have some control over that and how that happens and where it happens. It's a sign that, hey, that ship is still sailing. It hasn't been sunk yet. Mm-hmm. That's another one of those things I was ready to give up on, to tell you the truth. So anyway, I'm excited about that. Now, we didn't, at the point of this production of our podcast, we have not received the official ruling yet on the Roe v. Wade thing. But a new study came out that shows that more than a quarter of the 790 abortion facilities across the nation would be closed if the Supreme Court overturns that Roe v. Wade decision. 13 states, you see, the reason they came up with this, 13 states already have trigger laws in place that would immediately prohibit abortion if Roe's overturned. In other words, they would click just like that. And so that what that means, they say, is that those trigger laws would close approximately 202 clinics immediately. That's 26% of all publicly advertised abortion facilities in the U.S. That would happen the moment that the decision is actually officially released. Mm-hmm. Isn't that cool?
It's great. It's great. Now, along with that, that's great news when it comes to the Roe v. Wade being overturned, which we hope has happened already or will happen at any moment. Something else is going to happen that's not good. There's going to be violence, Cleve.
Oh, yeah.
So there's this organization called Jane's Revenge that has been destroying, attacking pro-life pregnancy centers all over the country, vandalizing them, firebombing them, those kinds of things. They will riot and protest. Yeah. It's going to be, it'll be similar to BLM. It won't be quite as widespread. Probably, and therefore won't be quite as bad, but it will be violent. And when the decision comes down, this is going to happen. And we know, based on the behavior of the Biden administration, they're not going to do a lot about it.
Now, so you brought up my main point behind that. I actually believe they're going to have these days of rages that they call it. But the point is, they will be given tacit permission by the Biden administration to do it, who will not, I think, take the necessary steps to quell it. and especially in these
prosecute it
in these
whatever, when
cities,
they catch them.
that are doing it. They definitely won't do anything like that. That's a great point. So I think we need to be prepared. But I'm going to make an extrapolation here, and I could be wrong. You're going to call me one of those conspiracy theorists. But I actually believe they not only will do the writing to show their displeasure about the decision, okay, but I actually believe they will create an atmosphere leading into the midterms that may require some emergency authorization about those days of voting.
There may be somebody that tries to do that. I could see that happening.
Well, think about what I'm saying here.
Yeah, I know.
Because these people, the progressives, they are cornered. The Democrats, their backs are up against the wall. If they don't come up with something, they will receive a shellacking of historic proportions.
It looks that way.
And David, I'm tired of saying, well, they would never do anything like this. I'm just tired of saying that and then saying them doing something like this.
Yeah, you can't put anything past them.
So I just see them wanting to cause some kind of instability, some kind of situation or atmosphere where some high officials, whether it be state level or even beyond that, will say, oh, we're going to have to do thus and so. Because of the instability right now with the elections. Either hold off, do some other things that'll make it easier to vote. Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Don't put anything past these guys, David. I'm just learning that after all these years.
It's going to be an issue. It will be an issue. Do you remember way back when Barack Obama was running for president, and you had in certain places, you had Black Panthers.
I do remember
standing out front polling places with guns.
Well, some of them didn't have guns, but they had batons.
Or they're threatening.
Yeah, there was something in their hand. I remember the pictures.
So forgive me for misremembering some of them had guns. Okay, my bad, but they were there. Okay.
Okay.
The idea was that it seemed a little intimidating.
Yes, it looked intimidating to me.
That happened many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're at a point in our country where the next time somebody decides to go to a polling place to intimidate people, it's going to be a lot more serious.
Yeah.
And much more intimidating.
I agree. I agree.
In other words, it could actually be dangerous in some places to go vote.
Yeah.
Now, the Black Panthers, they did this in like Chicago or something like that, MAGA country.
Right.
But that place was going to be very heavily Barack Obama territory anyway.
Yeah. Well,
we may see this kind of thing in some swing places, swing districts. This is going to be an issue.
Well, and to prove your point, the complaints were made about that by voters at those polls, and those complaints were submitted to the Justice Department.
I remember
who investigated it and determined there was no intimidation. There was no You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
Eric Holder was like, "Nah, it's fine."
Right. So if they can do that then, and in this rarefied atmosphere that we're in right now, they will still adopt some attitude that will allow these rioters or protesters or whatever you want to call them to do their thing, up to the point where I can see where some official will say, well, we're going to have to close this poll, or we're going to have to shut it. It's not going to work, so we're going to have to. You follow me? Mm-hmm. Anything to put off the reckoning that these guys have coming. All right, I mentioned Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. He was on CBS recently, and it was on the CBS Morning News, and Gayle King and Nate Burleson are the people who co-host that.
Oh, yeah, old Nate and Gayle.
Yeah. Anyway, they asked him about the January 6th committee hearings, what he thought about it, and was it going to hurt the Republican Party? And that's what King asked him. He said, do you think it's hurting your Republican Party? And Youngkin, he's a smart cat. He said, well, the media is more focused on it than voters are. And he brought up the fact that their viewership of the networks has plummeted for the daytime hearings. And he said, quote, I think the media cares a lot more about this than the people do. And we can tell there's primetime coverage. And candidly, not many people are watching it. So
that's true.
They were trying to lure him into making some type of statement, either to be anti-Trump or pro-Trump or something, to further the divide and maybe even hurt this guy.
Yes. The midterm elections, Cleve, it's about Congress. Okay.
Right.
It's not about Donald Trump.
Okay.
It's not going to be about Donald Trump.
But they're trying to make it about Donald Trump.
And it doesn't matter what they do. Even if this made Trump look terrible and awful, and we'll get to that in just a second, no matter what it says about Trump, It's the Democrats that are currently in office that need to be worried. It's not even Republicans that are currently Congress people that need to really be that worried right now. It's Democrats that are in Congress that need to be worried right now. So as far as the midterm elections go, this is a nothing burger.
Okay.
It has zero effect whatsoever because people are. It happened 18 months ago. All this stuff you're talking about happened 18 months ago. Trump hasn't been president for 18 months, and we're feeling it. All right, we're feeling inflation, feeling higher prices. We're feeling the economy slow. I believe we're in a recession right now. We're going to find out in a little while whether or not this is actually a real recession or if it just feels like one. That stuff is much, much, much more important. So it doesn't have any effect whatsoever on the midterms.
So the distraction is not going to work.
It's a dream for the Democrats to think that this is going to affect the midterms. Now, will it affect the presidential election that's happening in 2024?
Yeah.
Maybe. So if people are watching this, it doesn't make Donald Trump look good. So that's the first thing. Not that many people are watching it.
Right.
For the people that are watching it, are there a lot of swing voters that are watching it? No, because there's not a lot of any voters that are watching it. Right?
Yeah.
So, but does it make Donald Trump look bad? Yes.
Well, that's the purpose.
I think that it does.
Yeah.
I think it legitimately makes Donald Trump look bad. So, could it affect 2024? I suppose possibly it could, but here we are. It's 2022. There's an election between now and that presidential election. A lot is going to happen, which is another thing we could talk about, by the way, because I have a changing position on what I think is going to happen in the Republican.
Before you give me that,
field.
I want to step back 1 second and say I don't believe this hurts Trump. I really don't. I believe that the media has such a lowered image and stature in front of the eyes of people that most fair-minded people, not you got a small sect that will never, ever do anything but hate Trump. Never Trumpers as much as those who are obsessed with Trump. Okay. But most people see what this is about. It's a pathetic attempt to give them something to run on because they have nothing else to run on. So,
right.
So for me, it's like everything else they do. It's going to backfire for the joke that they've made it, and it is a joke. It was not an insurrection. That was not what happened. What happened was, anyway, I'll just say it real quick because I want to get your points on this. Ted Cruz recently interviewed somebody with the FBI about one aspect of a man who was there at the insurrection, letting the people in, encouraging them to go in. And it turns out this guy worked with the FBI. But apparently this woman, high-ranking in the FBI, could not say one way or the other whether he worked with them or not, or what his purpose was.
Ted Cruz has been asking, what you're getting at is Ted Cruz has been asking them, was the FBI involved in January 6th at all? And they won't give a straight answer to that.
They wouldn't. They never said no.
It's fishy, okay? It is. I get you, and you're saying that it won't affect Trump, and you could be right. I think that it's possible that it could, but I don't think it's not. Right now, I would say certainly it's not an issue. And Democrats are grasping at straws, and they're missing so much because they don't have answers to the real problems that we have right now. What I was going to say is that we've discussed before that I have always thought that if Trump runs for president, DeSantis is not going to run. I no longer think that's the case. I think DeSantis will run against Trump.
You think he's going to primary?
I don't think at this point, I don't think there's anything that will stop DeSantis. Well, I shouldn't say not anything, but DeSantis is running.
Okay.
Regardless.
All right.
I am convinced he will even run against Trump if Trump decides to throw his hat in the ring, which probably is going to happen. And I think it's going to be a very fascinating primary.
Do you realize, though, this is exactly what the Democrats want? Because let me
some infighting.
Yeah, a civil war is what they want, and literally, I think something like you're talking about may cause it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens and how everybody handles it. Ron DeSantis is extremely skilled.
Yeah.
He's very good.
He would be also,
and I think he can handle this.
An excellent candidate.
And he does not have the baggage Trump has. He also doesn't have the name recognition, and there's no Trump. There's nobody like Trump. Trump is the only Trump. So nobody can draw a crowd like Trump can. He has his strengths, but he also has his baggage. I think Ron DeSantis, and I believe I've told you this before, Cleve, is a stronger candidate in many, many ways. But I think that he is absolutely going to run. And I actually think that Trump is actually absolutely going to run too. But if it looks like Trump is not going to win, he will come up with a very creative way to bow out.
Okay.
And it will be good.
See, what I'm hoping is that you're halfway right, to be quite honest with you, because I would love for DeSantis to run with Trump's endorsement. I would love for that to be the case.
I think what you're going to see is that that they're going to run against each other. Trump is going to not be winning in some very key states like Florida. I don't think Trump wins Florida from Ron DeSantis in a presidential primary.
I hear you.
And I don't think he wins like New Hampshire, for instance.
Well, as a matter of fact, DeSantis polled better in New Hampshire than Trump did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I say all that to say, when it looks like Trump is probably not going to win the nomination, I think Trump, he's going to save face. I don't think that he's going to throw a bomb and blow it all up in this situation. He's going to find a way to save face and get out and endorse Ron DeSantis. I hope that that's what happens. I think Ron DeSantis is a better candidate. And
the problem is, for me, Ron DeSantis has time. If he doesn't run, he still has time. He's to me, he's not old, and so I think he would.
No, this is Ron DeSantis' moment.
All right.
Yes, he is young. That's correct. But these candidates, these people, they tend to have their moment.
I got you.
And this is his moment.
The big mo is definitely, I think, in his corner. Well, David, folks can hear about big momentum and everything else. How can they hear this program?
Well, you can find us on Spotify.
Spotify, yes.
So this has been a long time coming, and I'm sorry that it hasn't happened before this, but Mere Conservatism is now on Spotify, so you can find it there. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, find it on SoundCloud. You can find it on YouTube. Just search for MereCon Media. You can find it on Facebook. It's all over the place.
We're everywhere.
You can't turn around without stepping on some Mere Conservatism. Wipe it off your shoe. Enjoy it.
And if you're listening to the broadcast, you can catch us a couple of times a week as well. That's David Perry, and I'm Cleve Walker. And as always, we invite you to join us next time for another edition of Mere Conservatism. Obviously, it's not over with yet, so keep the faith.